Buenos dias, Pamplona. Gracias for inviting me. Thank you, Luis. Where are you? And thank you, Isabel, for the wonderful introduction. I'm really enjoying to be here. I'm very happy to meet so interesting people, to have so wonderful discussions. And also, I'm enjoying very much the food here, which is really extraordinarily great. For me, architecture is a tool to improve lives. And architecture is often said to be reflecting the society, but I strongly believe that architecture can even shape the society. And I think it doesn't shape the society with the big icons or some kind of stars, but I think it shapes it to the most common task to build shelter for 7 billion people. I think that's the greatest challenge of our times, that we find a way to house all these people on the planet, but at the same time not exploiting our planet, and at the same time also fostering social justice and also fostering a cultural diversity. And I don't think that these solutions are really sustainable. This is Mumbai, a social housing project, and all those structures is a kind of a global stupidity not to respect the climate, which is very common, unfortunately. But I think with those traditional techniques, or the new trends now with involving a lot of carbon emissions, a lot of energy from fossil fuels, with a lot of steel and cement, I don't think that we will be able to fulfill our task to host all the people. And I think we have to use common sense again, that has been proven as very worthful throughout centuries, that we use the most common materials that we found on the sites, the dirt under our feet, so whatever material we find naturally, use our own hands, our own creativity, and to build houses and shelter for it. And I mean, this is Yemen, Shibam. It's all load-bearing earth walls, and of course you find it in a much smaller scale. This is Bangladesh, the village Rudapur, where I lived a long time. And of course, when we are looking to those kinds of cultures, we always kind of getting sentimental. Well, all those cultures live in very sustainable conditions, and it's wrong to say they have to remain in these conditions and they are not allowed to develop, because of course they need a development of their living conditions. But I think it's really crucial to find a way how to improve lives and by the same time not harming our planet. And this is what I'm trying with my projects in Bangladesh. I'm using the local materials, whatever I find, mostly mud and bamboo. And I'm using architecture not only to build houses, but also to build up people's confidence and to build up really community. And that's the wonderful thing. If you're on the ground with the people working, you really feel the power of architecture, that you really can unite people. And it's a wonderful feeling when you, at the first time, stand in front of a pile of dirt, and then in the end, you know that you have nothing invested but your own physical energy and maybe the energy of 4 drilling machines to build this huge structure. It gives an enormous confidence in your own potentials, and this is a wonderful thing that I really want to transmit through architecture. Yeah, that's the school. In Bangladesh, this was the first project that I did, and I think the photo was done after I got the Aga Khan Award at the same time with Norman Foster. And, but the story started some years ago. I was 19 years old when I went to Bangladesh. I was just a volunteer, a curious girl after high school, and I was very glad not to come as an architect first to Bangladesh, but just as a curious girl, because it helped me to understand the real needs of the people, and also the real values, what happiness is about. And it's not about money. And there's a study of the School of Economics in London that the Bangladeshis are supposed to be the happiest people in the world. I don't know if this is right, but what is right is that they're very much able to produce a lot of things that they need for their daily life. And that's fascinating, that you live your creativity. And I think this is what we are kind of missing in our life. We ended up to be much more consumers and not really have the joy of doing things anymore. And I think that adds to the happiness in Bangladesh. But also the society, of course, is very vulnerable. They mainly live out from agriculture, and they have not many professions. So it's really needed to bring also some other work opportunities there. And I also learned of the scarcity of land. It's a country with one of the highest population densities. It's about 1,000 inhabitants per square meter, which is extremely dense. And then you can imagine during the rainy season, 70% of the country is flooded. So it's really enormously dense. So every street is not only a street to go from A to B, it's a place where you meet, it's a place where you dry your agricultural goods, where you work and play, of course. And that's a setting of a traditional household. It's grouped around a courtyard, and it's really very well functioning. The traditional houses are built out of earth and bamboo. And it's really incredible beauty when you walk around and you feel your senses are opening. It's also a tactile thing. You really feel physically drawn to these materials. It's really a wonderful thing. And although it is very dense, you really feel very well protected and very well surrounded by all these materials. So it was really fascinating for me to see the beauty in the most common things. And I also observed the building techniques, and it's fascinating that you really take the dirt, and then when the building is not maintained very well or not constructed very well, it goes back to the ground, and you just add water and your own time and labor again and rebuild the thing. But of course you can improve the building techniques, and I think it's also very important because nobody wants to live in a house where he or she has to be afraid that the wall is coming down or the roof is coming down. And this is also harming a lot the image of those materials. And I was, this is a map, a satellite image, and what's interesting, all these black spots are the mud holes that the excavations material. So you can really see how close the resources come from. So they take the mud, make a fishing pond out of it, and build the house out of the excavation material. And also one hamlet is always surrounded with the bamboo, where they take the bamboo for building the roofs. And this is the current trend in architecture there. This is the tradition, and this is where it's heading towards. And I think this is a very typical type of building that you find anywhere in the world, which is really sad to see the loss of the cultural identity there, and also the authenticity. And of course it's not only a shift in terms of aesthetic, it's also a shift in comfort, because these houses are much more hot, of course, but it's also a shift in economics. On this side, people are getting the profit. On this side, it's the industry who's getting the profit. And of course it has a major impact when it comes to carbon emissions and embodied energy. And this is the scenery when I'm leaving the capital, Dhaka, and going up to the north, to the village Rudapur, where I lived for a year. And this really always drives me mad to think, why do we put all this energy and this carbon emissions in this wonderful material, and why don't we just take the raw material as it is and build it in a more careful way, and then it can just go back to the ground with any harm. And I think this is not only the situation in Bangladesh, it's a lot in India, in China, so many countries in the world, and of course also here, that we pump all this energy in our materials, whereas we could just use the raw materials. And I was thinking, and after that, after I came back from Bangladesh, I started to study architecture, and I wasn't quite disappointed, because I didn't know I had this passion for architecture, I had this passion for development work, and I didn't know how to combine these two things. But for my diploma, I decided to give something back, because I really had a wonderful time in Bangladesh. And what I learned in Bangladesh was that the most sustainable development approach is to use whatever you find on the place and bring out the best of it, and not to depend on external markets. And I thought this is really something that you can directly transform in architecture. And I thought the most important thing is to give these materials, these natural raw materials, again, a good image. Because when people love something, when people see the when people are ready to give the passion and the time to something, then they also automatically develop it. And I think this is what is missing in Bangladesh. They don't see the value of those materials anymore. So I thought I'd start with a public representative building, which is a school, that people really can see the potentials of these materials. And then I had another school that first was planned as a library and office building, but that turned out to be a vocational school later. And I also built some houses in the village with students from Bangladesh and Austria. So this was the first one, the school. Then this was the Deshe building, a vocational center that also has residential areas for the teachers in it. And of course I also tried to train people in advanced techniques together with my team. And these were the shelter, the houses, that some kind of pilot projects for the farmers within the village. These were the drawings of my diploma. I got a B grade for that. It's very simple. So it's all load-bearing earth walls, and in the back wall you have this kind of caves. And I just tried to remember what kind of spaces I liked when I was a kid, and I think it's the most common thing, trying to hide somewhere on the bushes, on the tables, and building tents, and really have this very protected feeling, but also to climb up and to have this overview and this freedom kind of thing. So I just tried to combine these two elements with this very grounded earth floor and then this very light, airy bamboo floor on top. After school, I had no idea how to build, and it was very fortunate that I had a colleague from Berlin, an architect, who was very experienced already, also in earth and structures, Arquitectura, who came with me to Bangladesh for 4 months for the first part of the construction. And what was also very essential was to have the local NGO Deepshika as support, especially Paul Tigger, who always told, when you're planning something, you never know if you're going too far or pushing too far with also with the level of development or innovation. And it's always good to have someone saying, okay, this is what people could accept, and this is what is too hard for them to accept within the culture. So it was very important to have this dialogue all the time. And what was also very important, that we had great craftsmen in the team, so Manuel and Stephanie Heringer, my cousin. He's a carpenter, a basket weaver, and a scout, a Boy Scout, me too, which is very important when you see the lashings afterwards. So a lot of techniques come from that. Whenever I start a project, I'm trying to see, I'm really doing a research on what local potentials are there in terms of material. It is modern bamboo and straw. And in terms of energy sources, it was the human labor and the water buffaloes. Those were the mixing machine. And then we also looked, of course, to the local skills. And the major improvement that we did was a very simple one, is making a real good foundation and a damper, of course. There's a very simple rule for earthen structures. They need good boots, a good foundation, and a good head, a good roof that is not leaking. So that was the basic thing that we introduced. And it was very new to the Bangladeshis to make a damper. Of course, they thought the building would slip from the plastic or from the foundation, and we really had to convince them that it works. And then it was just put by hand on top of the foundation. And what we did is, this is a traditional wall, and you see a lot of cracks. It's pretty unstable. And what we did, we mixed straw in it that acts as a kind of a reinforcement to make the wall stronger, so you have much less cracks. And then after some days of trying, you just cut the walls into accurate shape with a spade. So the spade is basically, with the water buffaloes, the only tools that we needed to build these walls. And then you just add on the next layer after a couple of days. So it's constantly rotating. Well, when you plan something in a remote area and then you come to the site, you of course have to expect some surprises, and we did some tests with a nice bamboo from Colombia, which was really perfectly, it worked out perfectly, every test, and we were very happy. And when we came to the site, the bamboo looked like this. And we were really a little bit, we couldn't believe. And then not only that it was curved as spaghettis, it was also really way too thin, because they mixed up the diameter in the radius. So it was really, the structural engineer said, no, we can't build the first floor. We have to stop with the earthen structures. But then we did what is kind of common use since a long time. We just built a mock-up, because all the calculations didn't work anymore. So we built a one-by-one mock-up, and Christoph Ziegert, who was the structural engineer, was there. And then we finally took the problem that we had as a solution. So the curved bamboo that was driving us mad in the beginning was finally the solution, that we really built it in an elevated way. And then we made the crash test with a lot of people. That was you see them all checking if it's okay, because they didn't believe, they never built the second floor, so they were really scared. It was important really to test it, and to also to gain the trust of the people. And you see it worked out. And this is the traditional lashing technique, and that shows a little bit how we try to incorporate the local knowledge. It was always our main aim to find solutions and technologies that are able to be replicated by the immediate environment. And instead of 2, we took 3. We took a better lashing technique than they had from the scouts, and then and we had an iron pole. I'm trying to be as pure as possible with the materials, but this would have been not possible without this iron pole. But for smaller spans, we did it with a bamboo pole, and also with coconut fiber, a rope. But I think what is important is when you absolutely have to use these materials in order to really build the main part out of the raw material, then you have to build it in a way that you can easily separate it again and reuse it, and which is very simple with this kind of lashing technique. So there were a lot of lashings and a lot of blisters, and we just filled the floor with the cut off parts with the straw and mud again. And if you remember the curved bamboo, you can imagine that it is quite difficult to build 12.5 meters of straight beams, and it was quite a challenge, but they came out quite straight in the end. And always testing with mock-ups was very important. And of course, we also didn't have cranes. It was really, we just started to prefabricate the beams, and we had no idea how we get these frame structures on top. But it's always the system in Bangladesh. You whistle once, and then a lot of people come together, and you lift it together, and it's always very exciting, and it's also really fostering the feeling that together we can do it. And there's a nice saying of Hassan Fatih that one person cannot build a house, but 10 people can build 10 houses. And I think that's really right. And this is a wonderful experience that you make. And after 4 months of construction, it looked like this. So in the walls, there's no cement, it's just straw and earth, and the bamboo on top. And then another 2 months, it looked like this. And we had a lot of discussion if we should plaster the walls, for example, which are very rough for the Bangladeshi taste, so they really like very refined things. But it was important to keep the rough surface, because they were immediately rumors going on, oh yeah, the foreigners, they mix in some medicine or whatever to make the wall strong. And it was really important to bring the people in front of the wall and say, touch them and look closely what you really see in the walls. It is nothing else in the walls but straw and mud, and that makes the walls strong, and it was very important for them to see it. But still, the building looked very raw, and it was very important to bring the colors in, because that really opened the heart of the people. That moment they really accepted it and really liked it a lot, the school. And also in the end, the kids all signed with the names on the doors, which looked like this. So every year they're adding the names. And new kids, it's inside. And it's common use in Bangladesh in the rural areas to sit on the floor. So we just did the same thing. And through this bolt hole, you come to the cave area. And the philosophy of the school is learning with joy. And they also respect the different pace of learning. It's a little bit orientated towards Montessori, but in a different way a bit. So when kids are done with their work, instead, they're not, usually they're disturbing the others because they're done already and they want to do something else and they're getting impatient. But instead of that, they just take a book and go back to the cave areas and read something. Or also the teacher can divide them in different groups, in small teams, and some can be in that cave, the other one in that, and in the corner. So it works out very well. And of course they also play in the breaks. And that's the top floor. And it is tradition in Bangladesh. It's a very common use. I really tried just to walk through the village and just try to pick up all the inspirations and the most common things that we had. And there's just so much beauty all around. And what they often have below or above the bed is some saris to protect, because often from the reed roofs there's some kind of dust coming up. So we just used the same system with the saris and brought the colors in. And that's the school from the back. And for me it was fascinating to see that although the language of the structure is not very traditional, but because it is made out of the earth, it's kind of blending in the environment. And I think whenever you use something from the place, the materials, the resources in an appropriate way, it can never be an alien. That was something that didn't work out. I planned a vertical garden just to show that you can use every little space to cultivate food, and also to protect the wall for the harsh rain, the monsoon rain. But the goats came 4 times, I tried, and the goats came 4 times and ate all the green that we planted. So finally we gave up. But the good news was that it wasn't needed for the protection of the rain, because the facade is kind of a self-healing thing. The straw is coming out a bit when it's getting eroded, like a ½ centimeter, and then the straw is kind of acting as a speed breaker. So it's like in the river, if you have a lot of rocks, the water can't get really deep. And also the clay particles expand when they're getting wet, so they're closing the cracks and the water is not going deep in the wall. So it really functions very well, even in that harsh climate in the monsoon. Yeah, it's very rare, this scenario. You hardly have electricity in that village, so we really had to build with the local climate, with a lot of cross ventilation and natural light, so that it really works without electricity. The second building was a vocational center for electrical training, and that was the first school that the choice of the material was unfortunately my choice. And not the choice of the people, because they wanted, of course, to have something more representative thing, like brick or concrete. And I hated it to have a top-down decision, kind of, but they would have never chosen it voluntarily, I think. But the local NGO supported me, and they said, yes, we can see that it makes sense, and people are getting the profit out of it. And during the process and after that, they all understood it. And it was really, they just had no alternative solution, or not no alternative model, and they just thought, okay, modern bamboo houses are just small and dark and humid huts. So this really changed, and for this school, it was really the wish of the people to build it in modern bamboo again, and that was very, very a happy moment for me that they really wanted it. Because they also saw the main part of the budget is really remaining within their village immediately. And it was so nice well, whenever we stopped work, we just went all together to the local market by bicycle, and I could immediately see how they spent the money, because they got the money every day, the salary, because they were day laborers. And I could see how the money flow was. So they bought the vegetables from the neighbors, or the wife of the worker could afford a new sari blouse, which she got tailored by the other neighbor's wife. And so you could immediately really trace the money, and it was really having an impact on the village a lot. And that was a very important experience for me to see. So this school was these were the original drawings. We had no other drawings, so it was really it was really emerging from the place, which was very nice. And I always had to be a little bit ahead of time with the drawings, but a lot of things were never drawn. They were just coming out of the process. And I tried to reinterpret the traditional household with the courtyard in the middle and the houses with separate functions around it. And in the beginning, I had planned really a long, just one complex. And I knew that when I just reflected on it, I knew that it's not the right scale. And I think this is very difficult to find the right scale of when you build in an environment that you're not so familiar with. So I really had to separate it in different structures. And but of course, the teachers, they don't want to cross the courtyard by rain in the rainy season in the night when they have to go to the bathroom. So it was really important to show a sample of how you can live in that climate, in that culture, but with more comfort. Because it makes sense to have a courtyard, or in that case a large veranda, because the climate is so comfortable, and they also love to be outside. So it was important to incorporate all these traditional lifestyles, but also to enhance it so that they have more comfort. The team was more Bangladeshi that time, and it was a great pleasure to work with Montaram Shah. Stefan Neumann was my structural engineer, and Hasibur Kobir from the university was a teacher who came with his students to help building the school and also the houses that were built on the same time, and also did the landscaping. So this is it has 2 classrooms, offices, the residential areas for the teacher, and then sanitary units, showers, and a technical room for the school. The students were very much involved in the construction process, also in the electrical fittings, of course, and they did all the solar installations, for example, and solar installations are now even part of the curriculum. In that building, we tried to refine the craftsmanship even more, to show that bamboo is not just a structural material, but that you can also really have very refined finishes with it also. And we went to the village and just observed all the basket weavers, what kind of patterns they made, and because they are lacking of jobs now, because also the trend is to use plastic instead of this baskets anymore. So it was important to show other possibilities of use of the skills and craftsmanship and how you can make it in a bigger scale, and this is what we did there. Also, this time we plastered one of the houses because we knew that people just like it more, but we also tried to find ways to how to improve it, that it's not washed so easily from the wall. It was partly very archaic, and this is of course a very risky thing, but it was sometimes with every project you have to try to be a little bit to cross the comfort zone and to try something new. And we built it's 3 stories and has no large overhang, and it works. And even it's shaded by some trees and protected by some trees, but the material is really so strong that it works with that climate. And we just wanted to show that you don't have to be afraid you have to work with the calculated erosion. If it's maybe eroding 1 centimeter, you just make the wall a little bit thicker. And what the nice thing is, people sometimes ask me why the windows are always like this. The people or the workers are totally not trained. They even can't read or write. They can't read a ruler, or, you know, so it's easier to make it irregular than to make it in one line. It would have been anyway strange, so we just try to make it a little bit more that it looks a little bit more composed. We had very simple effects, like we just used the leaves for the shadows, and then again the saris, which were done by the local tailor students, and then did the veranda. And this is the most, this is kind of the sanctuary of the house. And people like the school, the Métis school, but they really love this building. They all go there and they're getting shiny eyes and say this is the first time that they have an experience of such a space where they can be outside but still have some privacy, because normally when you're outside in Bangladesh, because of the high density, you're never alone. So it's really, and they have the feeling, you have the patterns from the shadow from the leaves, and you have the filtered nature through the bamboo shutters. So you have the feeling you're really part of the environment, but still being private, and it's the living room. We also improved it in terms of thermal comfort with a lot of coconut fiber as an insulation material. There on top. This is the niches in one of the teacher flats. Monsoon window. And this building also is fully energy autarkic. It's not even connected to the grid. So I think it's very important to find a reasonable balance between high-tech and low-tech. Earth, of course, cannot produce energy, but solar can or sun can. So, but I think what I'm finding a little bit difficult at the moment when I see the current trends of sustainability, that they're focusing too much on technical solutions and on high-tech. And this is, again, a sustainability only 1/3 of the world's population can afford. And I really question if sustainability is sustainable if it's exclusive. And I think it's very important that we find a reasonable balance of high-tech and low-tech. And it has its own well that the water is pumped by solar and it's distributed, and also, of course, the solar collectors for the hot water and septic tank, which are decomposing. So it's really a totally autarkic building in itself. So the third project is about shelter, is about housing again. We did a research with some student colleagues, Petra, Gunnar, and Tobias in school, we observed that, well, this is a traditional household from a poor family, and the same amount of people live in this compound. So wealth is really expressed by space in Bangladesh. And the strange thing is, although the country is so highly dense, populated, they're not increasing in 2 stories, they really increase only horizontal-wise, in most parts of Bangladesh. And we were just wondering why is it not just possible to add 1 story and save all this space for agriculture. This is just a little scenery of the household, just one that I showed you. This is the courtyard. This is one of my workers, Chitin, with the son of the other worker. So this is just the normal setting that you see of the houses, the traditional households. That's the bathroom. The 2 ladies were really funny. So the main theme of this project was really to give space to agricultural production, because they really often face a severe food crisis in the country. And it's possible to add another story, even 2 more stories, just with their own hands and their own resources. And of course, in the cities, you can staple them in multi-stories, but then again, you need a lot of steel and a lot of electricity. And also, there, the people are much more self-sufficient because they have the fields, and they're much more independent to run their life. Whereas in the cities, they're really getting more more and more dependent on other things. And these were the drawings of the students. I had 6 students from Austria and 8 from Bangladesh. And they were in charge to design, but also to build. And I think it's very important that architects learn to build again, because you have a total different relationship to energy once you really physically build a wall. If you just click with a few clicks and have a 12-story building, you don't really feel how much energy is in it. But once you really built and felt it, how hard it is, I think you have a different feeling of responsibility also. So this was the client's house, Hemonto's house. He was living there with his wife, with his 2 kids, his mother-in-law, and 2 cows and 3 goats in this room. And the door was the only window. And that was how it looked afterwards. And I was very happy that the students were really trying to be humble, because whenever you add some new development, or you push something, you also have the risk of pushing some social friction, because the families paid a bit and also contributed labor-wise to the houses, but we really didn't want to cause a social friction between the neighborhood. So they show a significant step in development, but yet it is something that people can really replicate, and it's not something to say, well, this is exclusive and I'm so special, but it's something that really invites and motivates people to copy. And we did very close calculations with the simulations in terms of thermal heating and cooling, so with the windows and everything, so that it's really comfortable climate throughout the year, which is important because in winter sometimes people even die. This is Rohini and his wife making the first mud, and it's just wonderful to see how proud the families were to have a mud house, which is absolutely not usual in that area. That's Shepal, the other client. And we tried some new things with the foundation, even a ramped earth foundation wrapped in a ferrocement. And we really also tried to add some dignity, not just to give shelter, but also to add some dignity into the houses. Yeah, coming a little bit to the process. This was a team, including the mixing machine. And what was fascinating was that the workers, they were just called day laborers in the beginning, and they had a very low social status, because bricklayers are bricklayers, and carpenters are carpenters, but mud and bamboo workers were just day laborers. They had no real profession. So in the end, when we finished the project, a member of parliament came from the capital, and whenever something is happening, then really a lot of people come, a few hundreds, because there's not so much attraction in the rural areas. So the entire village and the neighboring villages were all there present, and in front of everyone they got their first certificate in their life. Most of them never went to school, so it was really the first certificate in their life, and they were officially mud workers and bamboo workers, and not anymore day laborers, which was really a total different status. And this certificate is now proudly hanging between Radha Krishna and all the Bollywood stars in their hearts. And every morning we had a morning round, and in the beginning we always tried to set aims, how many mixes we want to achieve and how many meters of walls. Also because we found out in the beginning that it was very difficult for the workers to interlink their tasks. So they thought, they didn't somehow understand that when we just had a short number of mixes one day, that the other day we were running short of in meters of the wall. And it was very important to show how the tasks are interlinked with each other, and also not that we are just imposing always the aims, but also that they set their own aims. And it was funny, one day we were really, no, not only one day, there was a period of time where we were thinking, okay, it's getting really difficult to finish before Christmas. And that was the target. We wanted to be home by Christmas. So, and all the workers sat together, and we were thinking, what can we do to really make it more smooth and to make it more productive? And then they had the idea to make competitions. So one mixing team with the other mixing team and the buffaloes. So it was really, they were running behind the buffaloes and singing and jumping, and it was really fun. And there was a lot of motivation on the side. And it was always important to not only just impose the decisions, but always have the people involved. And these two, in the back, the two elderly, they were really difficult. With all the people, we were very close, and it was really a very nice friendship. We went every day to the tea stall on the market, so it was really very close. Only these two, they were kind of always separated, and also not really, they didn't want to work. So we were going to the NGO and telling, that they're just demotivating the entire team when they're always just sitting smoking cigarettes. So we thought we're gonna fire them. And then the NGO and also the co-workers said, no, you cannot fire those two. And we understood that they have a very high social status, but we just didn't understand. We didn't find the key to them. And then one day, I said, well, I need 2 persons to build the caves in the school. And then the 2 showed up, yeah, we're gonna do it. And I thought, oh yes, certainly, because you can hide very, very nicely and smoke your cigarettes and nobody sees it. And I was very unhappy about this decision, but I thought, okay, the first initiative from them that I'm seeing since months. So I gave them the task, and then I just showed them, this part should be lower and this higher, and then I left. And I didn't expect that something is coming out. But they had so much fun in this task, and they were so proud that this task were handed over to them, and nobody was there and telling them how to do it, and nobody was kind of teaching them, that they had the freedom, and they did a brilliant job with the caves, and they were so proud, and everyone came and was so excited to see the cave rooms, and they totally changed. So they were really, really supportive afterwards, and it was wonderful to see how you can really motivate people just in stepping back, also as an architect, and not trying to control everything, but really trying to give space to the craftsmen. It's a little bit like there's this famous conductor, Karajan, and it's told from him that he knew exactly when he has to be really strict with his orchestra and when he just could let them flow or go with the flow. And I think that's a very important thing that we have to learn as architects, not trying to control everything. The kids were involved in the process, which was very important. They were there every afternoon to help us. And the nice thing with these materials is that you can actually do that. And they also tried to replicate the caves and built a little oven where we made bread, Austrian bread afterwards. It was very good after 3 times rice a day to have some Austrian bread. And of course it was very exciting for the girls also to use machines, and that was the opening of the school. And women on site was another topic that I tried on the first project, which I failed. I couldn't involve them because everyone told me no, construction workers are not women, and I accepted it. And then on the second, on the Desche building, on the vocational school, where we had the Austrian girls, we had the girls from the city, from Taka, the students, and the flirt level was quite high on the site. And I could feel that there's really a friction in the village, that the women were really kind of not happily observing what the men were doing with the girls there. And I thought this could get really critical. And I thought, well, what should I do? I can't tell them like a mom, stop flirting, and I just didn't know how to do that. So I had the idea to invite the women as workers, to employ the women as workers. I told the men that I'm going to employ their wives, and said, oh no, they really hated the idea. And then they said, I don't care. And then they came again with this idea, no, it's not part of our culture. And I said, for the plastering, I saw a lot of women doing the plastering all the time in the houses. So this they couldn't deny, and they came on site. And the nice effect was, which I didn't expect at all, they not only stopped flirting with the foreigners, they actually started flirting with their own wives, which was really absolutely strange in the culture, because you don't have this open dialogue and contact with your wife in public. But it was just a mood on the site, and it was really wonderful. And the women were coming with us, not always, but sometimes to the tea stall, which is absolutely not common to go as a woman in a public tea stall to drink a tea. It is just absolutely uncommon. But they did it in the group, and it was really, it really changed also the culture between the genders in this village. And the last project in Bangladesh was a workshop for Bangladeshi architects, organized by the Chamber of Architects and the government, and they wanted, which was really nice, it was after the Aga Khan Award, they became aware of the school and the techniques, and said, it's really a new perspective. We always saw mud as, or mostly saw mud as a kind of a intermediate stage of development. If you cannot afford any other materials, then you use mud, but that it could be actually the end product of development. That was something new, and they were very open to learn from modern techniques of earth construction. And we had Martin Rauch, who's an expert in Europe in earth structures, invited to make the training, and it was nice. Then you see that in the back is the pilot project of sustainable housing of the government, and then we had our little test cube, and it was just so nice to see when really that you add so much authenticity and power if you really use your own potentials and your own labor and your own resources, and you have so much more authenticity than just using a common style. The last project, more close to Spain, is in Morocco. It was an international competition from the UAE and from Fondation Alliance. And I'm sure you know this wonderful mud structures in all around Morocco, which are there for a very long time and still in pretty good shape. But unfortunately, they are pretty abandoned, and all these new constructions are, of course, also in the more normal modern materials. And strangely, they paint them in earth colors, but of course, there's a total lack of authenticity. And our project is supposed to be in one of those kind of settings. It's suburb of Marrakesh, and it's the task was also to bring some identity to that place. And the idea was, we have the atlas in the back. Through rain and water, the material is eroding, and this is our construction material. We just built an architectural language out of that material, out of the excavation material, and one day, if it's not needed anymore, it can go back to the ground without any harm. So this was the basic idea. And we orientated in terms of shapes to the Xars and also the Medinas and madrasas. So we have a public space with a luge garden, which you don't see because it's our working model. So to invite the public to enjoy some a public space, and then a little microcosmos of inner courtyards. The use of the structure will be a teaching center for sustainable construction techniques, and so you have there's all these classrooms around the courtyards that are shaded, and you have all these earth walls, and in the middle you have this Tadelakt cube with the auditorium. And I'm doing this project with, not alone, with Martin Rauch also together, and Negele Weibel Architects and Salima Najee from Morocco. And here you see it, it's really this microcosmos of inner courtyards, where we took the proportions very much from the traditional one, but really tried to transform it in modern architecture and modern use also. We tried, in terms of techniques or technologies, to use the simple material, but to use it in different stages of technology. Very simple with hand ramming in the first part in the wall, but then making some prefabrications, local prefabrications with hollow cores, where you can pump the geothermal geothermally cooled air through the hollow cores in the mud walls within the rooms, and really tried to show how you can incorporate those basic materials within the modern construction process. And this is the facade. And this is a project of my colleague Martin Rauch and Roger Bolzhauser from Switzerland, and it's a very traditional technique to use this kind of speed breakers, these brick layers, to protect the facade. And what we did in our Moroccan project, we took that element, but took it with hollow cores and let it stand out like this, and then we kind of have a shadow on the wall. It's a very simple thing that you can make with the local craftsmen, and you have all these ceramic experts around and the potters, and you have then this shade that cools the walls, and also you have this ornament element that's kind of giving a fluctuant element to the massive static earth wall. So I think it could be a nice dialogue. And the last project is the Graduate School of Design at Harvard. I don't know if you have been there, some of you have been there, but this is the, it's a very unused space, very hostile space, very windy and totally not in use. And we just thought, we turn the wheel around. The inside of the school, as in many architectural schools, you're more trained, that you're waiting to be discovered as the new star architect. And I think it's now the time that we architects look ourselves for some task and see, okay, where are spaces that need some improvement? Where can we use our potentials? And how can we use whatever we find and use our own hands and make it, and not just wait for huge infrastructures or resources, but we can do it with simple means. And I think that was a very essential experience for the students, to learn not to wait until somebody finds you, but really to get proactive and really try to look around, see spaces that don't function and where you can have an impact. And we have the Memorial Hall, which is a traditional building in Cambridge with the baked clay, with the raw material, with the fire clay, and then of course the material of the modernism, the concrete, and we explicitly had the building in between it to say this is the material of the future, mud, and this is dealing with the challenge of our times to host 7 billion people in a sustainable way. And this is what the inscript that we had, built with earth and water, fashioned by the human hand, as resilient as concrete, this wall can be reclaimed by nature. So we had a process where everyone was involved, students, faculty, 150 people, and Martin Rauch was again coming from Austria to help, and students built, and it was really fascinating to see how not to be competitors all the time, but just to sit together and to work together to find, to make a better place of somewhere. And this is how it turned out. It's now even occupied by some homeless people, which I'm very happy about. And the interesting thing is it almost looks like concrete, but people constantly touch the wall, and even unconsciously that they go by with the mobile and suddenly touch the wall. So it's really interesting to see how you physically react on this material, and because I think nobody would get the idea to touch a concrete or glass. So it's really interesting to see how we physically react. And you might know this person. It's a paparazzi shot of Rafael Moneo. And it was really nice to have lots of people involved. And this is the material in a closer look. So it's the local clay with a lot of sea salt in it, which was a surprise. But that's the nice thing, that every soil is different and acts differently and has a different expression. That's also nice to find a very individual language also. And what was a very happy moment for me was when an African delegation came from 16 different countries in Africa, and they came to Harvard, and they saw that what they were expecting in some remote African village was actually at this place, had really a message for them to say, okay, this is something of value, and it's not something only for developing countries, but it also has a relevance here in our world. And it's, I think, also important for Spain, for Europe as total, that we really have to relearn the most common task of human beings, to be able really to use the potentials and the resources that we find locally and add our creativity, add our human power, and we have a lot of human power globally seen, 7 billion people, and make really the best out of the most common resources. Yes, and with this I'm ending. I think what we all need for this task is only a lot of creativity and also a lot of love to really see the beauty in the most common things, and also I have a great hope in also, especially in the young generations of architects, that it's not so much the aim anymore to be a star architect, but really to find meaning in our profession. And I think the meaning lies in serving the most common needs of humankind. Thank you very much.